It's the English in English podcast. That's
Go.
Eric.
They can't see our weird motions. We have to remember they're only
waiting
listening.
for you.
That's Brett. We have to remember that they're only listening to us.
Man, they can't see this glory. That's probably good for their eyeballs.
Yeah, because
you can't stare directly in the
naked
sun
right now.
Well, I was going to go more with like our glory.
Supernatural.
Right, yeah.
Like, show yourself at the seance, and it's like
Right,
eyes burn out. It blinds them forever. Gaze upon our splendor, ye mighty and tremble. What was that joke we were gonna do about like our artworks? We're gonna make an artist called
like,
Ozymandias or something.
Yeah,
no, we said
an art name called Ozymandias.
No, that was someone was saying something about erecting a statue of themselves in your front yard.
Yeah,
and I was like, yeah,
place
so
at its feet.
Right, and I was gonna say, yeah, just to be like, gaze upon my works, ye mighty, and tremble, and then it's just all these like Etsy level home artworks, like arrayed on a tarp at the base of the. With
like the draw, like, you know, the corrected
tags.
Saint picture of Jesus, like the one the woman butchered
the FJ Homo.
Right, yeah,
and
exactly.
some crocheted things.
Right, yeah.
Gaze upon my works, ye mighty, and tremble.
Despair.
And despair is what it is.
It's like, how fruitless your life is.
Right.
Even I, this mighty, fall to time, you know.
Well, that's not what it was supposed to be. Because it was written when the works were still great.
Right, yeah, but that's what it means now.
That's what it means now. So because it's basically dust now.
Right, now it's this crumbled statue with only the epitaph at the bottom, you know.
Right. Yeah. Which is a pretty cool epitaph, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's hardcore.
Yeah, exactly.
It's both hardcore and it's arrogance and it's tragedy. Right, in both ends of the spectrum.
Right. But if you're going to have a motto...
Right, yeah, gaze upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. It's right better than like the corporate motto.
It's better than like, can't we all just like each other?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Up-talked, like, nonsense. Right. So I was talking about that the other day. Someone didn't know what it was, the whole up-talking.
Up-talking, I'm not familiar.
It's like a Valley Girl thing was what it was.
Oh, the tone.
Where you just the intonation that goes up at the end of a sentence, but it's become really...
I thought it was some form of like special...
Well, it's some new like fucking mangina thing now, because a bunch of dudes are doing... Women do it worse usually, but a lot of guys, you know, like NPR levels were like, so I think we should like unpack this because like I hate that phrase too. Like, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
I'm like, why don't you unpack the fudge out of your anus?
I mean, I get what they're going for, but it's a lame way to say it. Like, let's dig deeper.
Right.
Let's break that down.
Yeah, it's one of those things that in and of itself wouldn't necessarily be stupid or weird. It's just become used by just like there's something wrong with rainbows. Used by that people, but once it becomes a symbol for these like
it's used by people in that tone is what it is.
But then and it's the whole ending something in a
that was something I was thinking about earlier.
It's fucked up because it comes across as either simultaneously very condescending and also very insecure.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
Well, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, because it's like, and like asking. Like, what? Are you asking a question?
But I don't want to actually be aggressive, so I'm distancing myself.
Right,
and
with
like
an ability to just be like, well, I'm
attack.
asking it, and just sort of presenting this for the consensus of the group. That's something
I want to slap your face, but I don't have the balls to actually slap your face.
Everything today is about consensus.
Well, of course.
Like that's I mean, that's like even the science. Has been known. You notice when they do all the global warming thing, they appeal to
consensus,
scientific consensus. It's
that's
who cares how many
following
people
the herd
believe
is the main thing.
But but especially when it comes to something like actual science. So like if you have the data, fucking let's see it. You don't have to show it. It doesn't matter how many scientists
they're trying to sway the masses, which are about following the herd these days because they've been trained to.
Galileo didn't have consensus,
right?
You know what I mean?
Right? Yeah, exactly. Newton didn't give a shit about consensus.
Well, I mean, Galileo didn't even have it.
Right.
The consensus was completely against him.
Well,
he was like excommunicated, basically.
But that's different than people think. What exactly?
I know, but the point being, just because it's most widely,
just because you're opposed politically. Well, actually, you're right. It is totally applicable in this situation because people like to say it was the Catholic Church shutting down because he said that the Earth was not the center.
He just went against the status quo, and they didn't.
Well, it wasn't even that. It was because of certain other things that he said. And now it's cooler.
He was just like disqualified as a person, basically.
Right, yeah, because he had questioned some other like rule of the papacy or something in some other aspect. They were like, we're not paying for your science either. This guy's a bad
thinker kind of thing.
Right, yeah, like we're not paying for your science either, and like stop listening to him. Right. And then they like to turn it around in history to be like, see, they were against science, even though they were funding him originally.
Right.
Turned out they didn't like him as a guy, not that they didn't like his science so much. It was more like just bad politics. But that's exactly the point. The consensus was petty politic bickering.
Not like, let's see the data.
Not like, let's see the data.
Right.
They didn't care about the data.
And I've noticed it, like, because it's not always saying that the consensus is wrong either. But the point is, like...
There's been times where
in and of itself, consensus is irrelevant.
Right. Well, the consensus has been, like, the Earth was flat at one point.
Right.
The consensus was that... your humors were out of alignment. We need to bleed
biles. You need to get your green biles in line with your black biles, or else you're gonna get sick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And some of the stuff we believe now is probably gonna be looked at just as ridiculous as that.
Right.
There's no reason being so fucking.
Oh, I know that. I know what those are. Like the future, they're gonna look at our ideas about genetics and be like, "What the fuck?" Were these people thinking?
And like psychology. Like, good God.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. As we.
That's another thing. Speaking of
psychology,
because I'm really... I know I bitch about this fucking every time, so I need to just sack up and do it, I guess. But
what's that?
Just getting off Facebook, totally.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, the only reason I don't is because I use it for communication and scheduling. I don't go on there.
For, like, setting up groups to say, are you going to attend
can't help
this?
But, like, right, because there's no other better way to invite people than, like, a group text, and then you can't see who's
But then you got to have everybody's phone number, and not everybody gives that out.
You can't know who's going or who's not, and you can't put, like, updates and stuff as easily. So it works really well for some things. That's the only reason I use it. But just in general, it's just such a hive of scum and villainy that
not even villainy. Villainy would it's
just weakness,
too mediocre for villainy.
Putrefaction.
Just that up talking.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we should think about this because it's problematic.
Right. I hate that one too. Problematic.
Oh, God.
It's like, that just means
that you're started.
Yeah. But anyways, speaking of psychology, there seems to be this race by everyone these days, especially particularly in our generation, sad to say, a race to show how fucked up you are mentally.
Yeah.
Like, this is what it's like living with someone with depression, anxiety, and this. I'm like, shut the fuck up!
Right. Well, I mean, we've talked about this before, and this is also one of my pet peeves, because I hate it on both ends.
Everyone's gonna have big
it's
bitch
like,
tits.
When I hate on both ends,
hide
it's
under
like...
a Snuggie all day.
Hide under a Snuggie.
Watching Gilmore Girls or something.
Right, yeah, God.
I'm like, why don't you just die?
Right. What I hate about it is I hate it on both ends, because on the one end you get the people who like look at this generation and how much shit they are, and then you get the actual generation being shit.
Right.
And I hate it because it's like, yeah, the generation is being shit, and B, they trained this generation, and of course it turned out the way they trained them.
Yeah.
Like they went to your schools, your government programs, they watched your TV shows, they listened to your propaganda.
Yeah, in a lot of ways it could be analogous to like racial situations. Like individual responsibility is obviously the most important. Like what someone does is no one's fault but their own.
Right.
But when you grow up in this fucked up situation, like what does everyone else expect to happen?
Right, yeah.
It's not about fault, but it's just like, what did you think would happen?
Right. When you bred and trained a generation of manginas on purpose, what did you think you were going to get?
Right.
You know, like...
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like when you go face an individual, you're like, this is your life, you know?
Yeah, what's annoying about them is like that people who can't break out of it, you know what I mean? Like, even when shown... That look, you've been trained wrong, you've been told wrong,
right? Like
and
when it's
they
finally
they got to double down.
Yeah, because I mean, when you grow up, like when you're like fucking 12 years old, there's only so much that realistically, if you're being fed bullshit, that
exactly. I mean, so many people. That's the story of everyone in our generation. Is like that's why the red pill is
like
a big thing to
pill,
people. Like not because specifically what the red pill is teaching,
you
but the idea of breaking past
even
a
something
way of
as simple as like diet. You know what I mean? Like to remove a lot of politics out of it. Something like if you grow up being taught a certain way about like this is fine, this is what's healthy or whatever, it takes unlearning it or just relearning.
That's my point. It's not red pills in like what people think of the red pill when we community.
Yeah, because no one's born like knowing this shit.
Right. We're just saying that so much of the world these days, or I'm saying I guess is so much of the world these days is misinformed on purpose almost.
Yeah.
And so any point in a man's life or a woman's life these days, if you want to know the right thing, you have to come to a point where you break the matrix.
You have to be willing to go upstream,
in a
hardcore way. Right. But at the same time, when you take an individual and you say, "Here is all the truth," and they're like, "Nah," and put their fingers in their ears, then that's on them.
Right, exactly. That's my point. And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Why I have some sympathy and hate those things. Like the millennial generation was like, we plugged them in the matrix, and they're in the matrix.
I do it a different way. When I make a statement about the millennial generation, it's mostly an observation, not a indictment or like saying it's their fault.
Exactly.
I'm saying like it's true that this generation is this way.
Well, that's why it pisses me off because it's like I see both. Like it is true and it's bad.
Right.
And they are bad at these things. You know, they're falling for these lies. But at the same time, it's also like, you know, it's like it is bad to be a rube who gets had by a con man.
Right.
It is also bad to be a con man.
Right. And people think you have to like choose a side.
Right, that's just something in general. Like,
because you come across with like the blaming the victim and anything.
Right, throughout everything, people can. If one person's wrong, the other person has to be right.
It's like a zero-sum game.
Right,
like if getting robbed is not your fault, then you never have to take any responsibility.
Right, or if the Republicans are right this time, then the Democrats are wrong, or vice versa.
Like one of them is right.
Both so
you
wrong.
they can. Why could not everyone be wrong?
Oh yeah, you could both be proposing incorrect answers to this problem.
Yeah, and I've tried to explain it before with people about there's a difference between fault and responsibility.
Yeah.
Like most people, like if you take someone who's like 22 and has, like we were saying, has been fed a bunch of bullshit for most of their life and now they're on their own and they have a chance to absorb it. Like most of the stuff they've done up to that point isn't their fault, but their life from here on out is still their responsibility.
Yeah.
Just like when you say like someone who gets raped or robbed, it's not their fault. But if you're walking alone through a shitty part of town with a big fat gold chain, a bunch of cash sticking out your pocket, you're being an idiot.
Your personal safety is your responsibility.
It's your responsibility, right?
Like we establish a society to try to have a collective responsibility for certain things, but it only works when you do all this stuff.
The should is irrelevant.
You're not allowed
to do. If you know that this is a bad part of town, you can talk all day about how you should be able to walk free without worrying about getting robbed, and I'll agree with you.
What also is funny is like
it doesn't matter.
Should be able to walk free without getting robbed, and yes, and we all used to agree on that. And the things we used to do to make that happen are now not allowed to be done.
But aside from that, I'm just saying you have the responsibility and you have the fault of the like that's never going to take it away that they did.
But I'm saying it's stupid thinking on both ends because there are certain collective responsibilities if we engage in them.
It's just like
choice, but they have to live with
the politics we're talking about, like that it becomes an issue of you either think that this guy was a total idiot and that makes it irrelevant that the guy robbed him, you know what I mean? Yeah. Or it's you can't be faulted at all because someone did a bad thing.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, no, you can both be idiots.
You can both be wrong.
You can have this guy be an idiot and then be a criminal. That can happen. Yeah.
You can have a stupid victim.
Because anytime I hear the thing like, oh, you can't blame someone for being like doing something stupid like being drunk and alone and then they end up getting raped or something like it's always bad to say that was stupid or something like that.
Right.
And I'm like, if I took any of those people that said that and I was like, what's your most prized possession of all time? Right. And if I was entrusted with that, whether it was like your kid's life,
would you want me drunk?
Well, no, I'm saying if I got it robbed from, like it was robbed from me out of my possession, you wouldn't think that was my fault. But then if you found out I left it in the back of my pickup truck and went into the mall for 6 hours and just left it sitting there, you'd be like, what were you thinking?
Right.
That was my most prized possession. How could you be so careless with it?
Yeah, exactly.
How can you be so careless? Because they would definitely think that you were being stupid, but they wouldn't think that it was your quote-unquote fault. You could have both. You could both be wrong.
Yeah, exactly. You could both have done
and doing something stupid that allows something bad to be much more likely to happen to you doesn't make it, not bad. It just, you're being an idiot.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Just like,
if the lion eats your arm, it's because the lion chose to eat your arm. But if you stuck it in his mouth, you were an idiot.
Yeah, you're an idiot. Exactly. Well, another example I always use is like crossing a crosswalk.
Yeah.
Like if you're in the right of way and you get creamed by a car, legally you're right. You're still dead.
Right. Yeah.
You know
exactly,
what I mean? So sometimes you just have to
if you didn't look both ways,
right?
Even
if you did and they just purposely mow you down,
right?
Because they're not paying attention or whatever. But
sometimes the legal protection
there's a difference between
matter.
it just doesn't being right is irrelevant. You're trying if your goal is to prevent this shit from fucking happening to you.
Right.
If your only goal is to just be I wasn't the one who did something wrong, then fine. You can tell that to your rape crisis support group. Right. You know what I mean? And you'll be right.
Yeah.
But my goal is to not get robbed and not get raped and not get run over.
Right, yeah.
So I'm going to look at the way reality is and deal with it accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same way with the generations, any issues that our generation's having.
Yeah.
Like, you're getting fucked, you know what I mean? But you can have to try and deal with the reality the way it is now. But that does not absolve like the baby boomers of all the stupid shit they did to fuck the country
honestly,
over.
Like even the other generations, even as much as we call
there's
it,
been no generation in human history that hasn't done some things wrong.
Right. It's just bad in our generation because it's been each one is
now we're reaping what's been sown.
Exactly, we're reaping what's been sown, and each generation has progressively sown the seeds of decline. You know what I mean? Like
in different ways, maybe. But
they bled all the fat of the land that they earned, and they sold it off in a generation or two.
Yeah.
Like wonderful. Real smart.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, it's not unique to America. Rome did it. Everywhere did it, but whatever.
Exactly.
It's disappointing every time.
Yeah, sadly.
Disappointing to be in the generation watching it happen. Anyway, enough dour stuff. I'm sure there's some news and things. A couple funny stories.
Okay.
And again, with just bad thinking, and everybody's got these little causes they got to champion every time. And like, for example, there was one study that some group did, and I came
bacon one or something.
What was that?
The bacon cancer. That's
no.
been making the rounds everywhere.
I think I saw that, but I didn't read it.
Anyways.
No, it was one about Vikings. Like, somebody did a study where basically they identifying Viking remains, and then trying to digging up tombs, and they got like goods buried with them. Typically, the men have like weapons and swords and stuff.
Women have like pots and shit.
Yes, brooches or something
right.
like that. Yeah, but so the article that I first saw, somebody like Facebook, and they were like, "Oh yeah," and it was like up to 50% of the Vikings, warriors were women, like in something, and it's like. And then the immediate, like, you may also, like, share it on Facebook beneath that or whatever, was other articles referencing this study.
Like, no,
and this first one was just, like, real short, like, it shows up to 50% of the bones they identify. And then the next one was like, no, relax, you're wrong. Because, like, what the actual study said was they were determining, basically, initially, the old thing was they would just look at what was buried in the tomb and say, this is a man or a woman. A lot of times, well, this was a man or a woman, based on the kinds of things in the burial site. Then somebody went around and did actual bone tests to say this is a male bone or a female bone, and so they were able to identify the bodies more accurately that way. And it turned out there was a lot more women than they thought, but they weren't buried with swords; they were just there. And so all it proved was that the men were bringing the women in the same boat when they went raiding, or not raiding when they went settling. So they would go with a
you think
boat.
They're going to colonize and stuff.
Right, exactly. So initially, though, their theory was the colony would send a wave of army and then a wave of women and children. Turns out they just sent them together. The women and children would be on a small town beachhead until they conquered the surrounding area, and then they'd spread out.
Right.
And or that is if they even met resistance. They might have just found an untaken place and then they just set up shop. But if everyone's had these, immediately posting up to 50% of Viking warriors were women, and they have these pictures of a girl in with the Viking sword and outfit and everything. It's I'm sure that's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
That's because all the sagas never mention this, right? But secretly, I hope
I don't even know why you would care anyway. That's the whole.
Well, it's all because it justifies what people want to do now. Like they want to use history, retcon history, or find parts of history to justify their tropes of
It's funny because they'll never go the other way. If you're well, let's look at the way they did everything else.
Right? Yeah. Exactly.
They're quite the patriarchy.
Cool. Yeah, they're quite the patriarchy. Let's emulate that. Sure, we'll take 50% of women in the army if you also make a sandwich at home.
Right. And polygamy. And,
yeah, exactly.
No females in any sort of leadership position.
None may own property.
Right.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
That's the type of shit that comes up on Facebook.
Right, exactly. This is the kind of fun crap. And there was one, actually. There was a surprisingly positive one, just because it was not positive. It was just interesting.
Right.
One somebody linked to on Facebook or whatever, and it was some guy who lived out in the desert for the past 20 years in Arizona or something.
Yeah. He made his own sovereign nation out there.
No,
Did you see that one?
I did not actually.
Okay. Anyways,
but this guy just crazy. These sandstone caves.
He dug caves.
He dug cave tunnels and turned into giant artwork, where these carved pillars and stuff, 30 feet tall, and he's just living in these 25 years of just carving
around in the desert.
What are you doing? It's cool.
Yeah.
What struck me about it is of course, the interviewer, the little segment from some news channel, something with no architectural degree or art studies, and I was like, yeah, of course. All these people go to school to get these art degrees. You don't have a degregee. How can he do this?
It's impossible.
Whoa, it's impossible. He doesn't have a degree. And that's
when were degrees invented?
Again, that goes back to what we talked about earlier. That's why half the millennial generation is as it is, because they were all taught this. If you don't do it the approved way, you can't do it.
Right.
And they fell for it.
Just like with money, they have where money starts at the business paying you your wages. That's where money.
That's where money goes. Yeah,
they start the knowledge starts at the university teaching it to you. And
right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that it has to be disseminated by an approved authauthority for it to be accurate or right. Or to count.
Well, because you notice that because they're projecting. They always, you see that in their arguing in their quote-unquote debating styles that they...
Well, what's so funny about it, too, is you're talking about, they're always making appeals to authority.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So they use
what's so
credentialism
about it
and stuff.
Is that all their appeals to authority are based on this philosophy, as we've argued many times, we won't get into it too deep, but it doesn't believe in any ultimate authority.
Right.
You're there is no authority except for the authority of this stamp I got from the government or this institution.
But then if it goes against what they're saying, there's a doctor that says you shouldn't follow the normal vaccine schedule. They're just
he's a double plus bad doctor.
Yeah, it shall not be named because he's against consensus.
Right. Yeah. So the authority in the end is consensus. I mean, that's why you have to go to school and everything else because it's what everybody does.
Right.
It's what's done.
Like, oh no, we got an individual.
That's what's so funny.
We got one that can see.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. We got an individual here. Yeah.
Get him.
Oh, it's so good. It's so true. So sadly true.
Lucky though, and this is what you're seeing with all these issues. You could pick anyone, when it's feminism or any of these things that we've been talking about. You're starting to see the SJWs, the social justice warriors, or whatever their most ardent supporters are of whatever these issues are, the most crazy of them, are getting so ludicrous. You're starting to see like a bifurcation of the population where people are starting to realize to the point where you can't just sit there and be like, sit it out. You have to sort of choose sides. Because you're either with them on their ludicrous positions, or you're finally saying like, no, dude, like that's too much.
Well, because that's what's
that automatically puts you on the other side.
Nobody recognizes
because then they kick you out of the warren.
Be there with them, calling the dissenters misogynist, because at the time these people were pointing out these social justice type people, they don't really care about equality when they say feminism, or they don't really care about the plight of women when they say or the plight of children when they talk about child custody or whatever issues, or they don't care actually about this race or this underprivileged. They're just everything is about finding something that sounds good to argue about so they can beat you over the head with it. And then when you don't approve what they're doing, they say, but that's because you want to kill poor people. Even though they're not actually spending money to help poor people. They never take their own time to help poor people. They
never do anything. Yeah, they just think it should be done.
They just think, exactly. It's a nice way to look. It's always easy to say.
It's just their religion.
Yeah, well, the religion is, I'm so good because other people should spend their money to fix this problem.
Right. Or because I support everyone doing this.
Yeah, I support everything. Except the things that
the point being, you're starting to see a situation where the moderates are having to support...
pick side,
they can't just play nice with both sides anymore because they're getting so far apart.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
That you can't just sit... The gulf in the middle is huge, so you're going to be standing out there... Like,
and it's becoming apparent how stupidly societally suicidal these ideas are.
Speaking of which, there was this article that I read where a little town in Germany of 100 people,
got like 1,000 or 5,000,
750 refugees are supposed to
outnumbered 7 to 1.
7 to 1.
If those refugees decided to just take everything in the town,
well, not only that, let's even do it. Let's look at it another way. Say you had an Indian village, like a Native American village, and there was 100 people, and 1,000 white Europeans go there. What do you think is going to happen to that culture?
Imagine we don't have history to tell us.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine that we don't, though.
Right? Yeah.
And just imagine what would happen. Even if nobody raped, no one murdered, no one brought drugs.
Right.
What's going to happen to the normal way of life in that village when they're outnumbered 10 to 1? What about 2 years later? What about 10 years later?
Right. The
average, the way of life is going to be the same.
Everybody tries to get along, but in the end, the majority, the people who are loudest and most, kind of win simply because the other people don't want to fight over it. You know what I mean? So they're like, we need roads to go this way.
There's a lot of people who bitch about them being the loudest, and it doesn't matter. It's because even if you're nicer, when you're outnumbered 10 to 1, 20 to 1, that is now the culture, and you're the minority. That's
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. The minority always is the minority.
Right.
So I don't know how else to put that.
So if you become a minority in your own country, then it's not your country anymore.
I mean, that's the problem with a lot of minority groups in the thing that people never want to address. They want to say it's racism in the country. It's like, no, it's the fact that they don't have their own country.
Immigrant isn't a race.
Right. Well, no, I'm not even talking about that. Let's say, the various minority groups within America.
Right, yeah.
They talk about how it's, racist to, there's been problems in the past with people being treated without due justice process because of their color sometimes, or something.
Like Irish people.
Right, yeah.
Our great-grandparents saw signs in the U.S. said, help wanted, Irish need not apply.
Right, yeah.
You don't hear me being part of some disadvantaged culture needs reparations.
Yeah, exactly. But all that aside, what I'm saying is that the problem with most minorities in countries is literally that. They're a minority in a country that's not really theirs anymore because they're the minority. And instead of having this idea that we need to find a part of this country that's ours, they have this idea that we need everybody to start accommodating.
Right, and also, but the whole problem is it comes originally from what Vox calls the magic dirt theory too.
Oh yeah,
because the whole idea of immigration helping someone, why is it better for them to move to?
It's only
Germany?
Better economically.
Right, but why? Why is it even better economically?
Because their economic system works better than their home
economic
system.
Why does it work better? Is it just because there's a magic patch of dirt that white people have landed on? No,
of course
because
not.
we've been doing things differently.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Than these other countries have been, and things have turned out differently. But when you have 10 to 1, now the people doing things a different way or who come in and outnumber 10-1. Way. Do you think they're still going to be doing things the German way in 10 years?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
To ask the question is to answer it, but
yeah,
and it has nothing to do with what the invasive culture or race is. It will take over if it's outnumbered like that.
Exactly. It's not a value statement of which one's better.
Happened in Native American culture.
It
just happens every time. So you have to defy the proof. If you want to think, if you're going to say something else is differently, show us some proof. Because we have plenty of proof to show the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, it's proof within every historical society. When it gets sufficiently multicultural, quote unquote, it starts to either break up.
Plus proximity equals war.
Right. Yeah, it breaks up either whether violently or peacefully. It either always breaks up or it always turns to third world status,
or just changes. I mean, the existing, because like America didn't turn into third world status when we destroyed the existing culture. But the point is, it destroyed the existing culture.
Right, yeah.
So you can make your statements about whether you think it's going to be good or bad, but you can't say it's not going to happen. So you have to be honest about, I want to destroy the existing culture. That's what you're saying with the mass immigration.
Well, that's what we know most people are doing. Right. They just don't know how it's going to turn out. What's so stupid about it is even those that want to change it, they think everything is still going to work the way they expect. My cell phone service will still be here.
Right.
Or the malls will still have the kinds of clothes I want.
That is the magic dirt theory. I just won't have any because it's been this way here.
I just have cheap labor. Everyone will still want to watch the shows. And no, they're going to want to watch Spanish Channel.
Or they're going to want to make
because why would they want to change?
No restaurants selling
we expect
food during Ramadan or whatever, because that's the way they do things. Why would you expect them to do things your way just because they live on your patch of dirt?
Right, exactly.
If you went over there, you're not going to not eat during Ramadan. Unless they beat you if you do.
Right, yeah, exactly. Because they have a strong sense of their societal identity.
Their standards, right. They're willing to fight. They're willing to fight.
Your diversity is being oppressed.
Right, they're willing to fight to protect their way of life.
Right, yeah. They're willing to enforce it, not just fight. But
I mean, and that's sort of what I was saying, though. It's gotten so extreme so quickly that they've sort of bypassed the frog in the boiling water point. Now you're seeing people being like, whoa, wait a
they're
second.
Pushing hard. They're realizing they're close to some sort of tipping point where it will know people were starting to wake up, so they're trying to
because once you get past a certain demographic point, it wouldn't matter what the German people thought about it.
Yeah.
For example, you know what I mean? Like if you're in a town of 1,000 and there's 100 of you, then it doesn't matter what you say about it.
I guess it just...
So they're trying to push past that point.
It's kind of dumb. But I mean, that's
it's
why
very,
what it is.
It's very
not
short-sighted.
Planned. It's just pathology.
Yeah, exactly. I don't subscribe to this cabal of Bilderbergers sit around in a corner, and then we'll allow all of them to flood into Germany, and then that'll fall. It's like no, it's just a pathology.
There is a cabal of businessmen who think to themselves, cheap labor's great. Let's make laws that help us get some.
But the reason I know that's the case
they don't think that far ahead to make
you see
Illuminati
that sort of thinking still at lower levels when it obviously doesn't benefit the person. That there's no reason.
Yeah, but that's because they're just following the pathology.
Right. It's just it's pathology. Yeah. But it's not. But we're starting to see it get so crazy so quickly that at least some people who might otherwise have just been like, you know what, leave me alone, leave me out of it, are starting to have to be like, this is getting ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's been one of the big sins of the West is that all this bad thinking, that is apart from the like we're talking apart from reality. But even the moderates who didn't necessarily think that way, they just the problem with the West and its various countries is things were going pretty good for us. We didn't want to have to do hard battles and all this stuff to try to stop stuff. You know what I mean? Let's not argue. Let's not fight. Come on, life's good. Let's just get along and keep life good and enjoy. Which is a nice sentiment, and I agree for the most part. But war is upon you, whether you would risk it or not. You know what I mean? To quote
Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a perfectly accurate quote for many times of life.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, the aggressor sets the terms of the conflict. And it's not always an attack in physical form, sometimes it's an ideological attack, a sociological attack, and the aggressor sets the terms of the conflict. And you gotta fight bad ideas as much as you gotta fight actual
and
bad.
It doesn't matter if you it may take two to tango, but it doesn't take two to have an attack.
Right, it doesn't take two to stab you in the back.
Right, you need to decide whether it's a war or just a beatdown.
Right, exactly. That's
the only decision.
The only thing you decide is whether or not it's a war or you just taking a beat,
or whether it's just an assault.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Because a fight just means you're fighting back.
Right. Exactly. You can decide whether it's a fight or just a murder, a craven murder.
Right. But might as well make it but it's going to happen.
Might as well make it a fight.
You will be getting attacked.
You have already been attacked. You might as well fight back. Right. You've already been robbed. You might as well get the guy who robbed you.
So we'll see what happens, but it's interesting worldwide.
Yeah. It'll be
interesting
times, as the
may you live in interesting times.
Yes.
Do we want to see what the internet advice people?
Yes, that has been a front with a comedy for the most part.
Eagle. Now I was thinking about something. Let's do movies real quick.
Yes.
This year was not great. So far for the end of the year, all we've got really is Bond and Star Wars. It's really the only ones I can think of. Next year could be good.
I'm neutral on both of them.
I'm
in my expectations.
Available to be.
I'm waiting to be impressed.
Exactly.
I am definitely going to see.
My body is ready, and I'll see them, but I don't have.
My body's ready. My soul's ready.
I would be surprised if they were garbage, but I would also be surprised if they were really, really good.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I'm waiting for them to be, unfortunately, tainted in some way. You know what I mean? Like they just didn't get it right, or they didn't get
just
it.
overwrought or something.
Right.
I don't know what it is, but I've just got a bad vibe.
The themes they're trying to harp on, like.
In general, I think it's just a vibe issue for Star Wars. I think they're just going to fuck up the vibe.
Yeah, exactly. But like, for example, like they have this weird mix of like try hard and not try hard right. Like, for example, the person they're putting like front and center on the posters is that chick who I don't remember the character's name.
I don't know, but it's probably going to be like a Luke Skywalker's daughter or something.
Maybe I don't know, but like again, desert planet. Person wondering about the wider world. Like, they've done this 3 times now with this person. Come on. It's like, they did it with Luke, then they retconned it back to Anakin was the same thing as Luke on a desert planet, wondering about the wide world and going off to join the Jedi. And then this person is on a desert planet, salvaging stuff.
Right.
And,
it's like,
seriously?
But
this time it's different, guys. It's a girl. Like, how creative, you know? Like, why not take this person and make them a different character? I mean, they probably are a different character in terms of personality, hopefully. But I mean, I don't know. Yeah, that got me kind of worried, Like,
but like I said, I think it's only a low chance that it'll be terrible.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think it'd be worse than
more competent writers than
there's more people working on it. Will keep it from being anything too egregious. Hopefully,
it's been proven that the Star Wars fans make better Star Wars than George Lucas at this point.
Yeah. But next year could be good because I think there's like 2 or 3 Marvel movies, maybe even 4.
Captain America, and then
Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's the next. That's 17.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
But then there's
another. They're just starting to film
Isn't
that.
Thor 3 coming out then too?
Maybe that might be 17. I think.
What about the Black Panther?
I think 16 is.
Let's look it up. The Marvel movie calendar because they have it all out for 2020.
But anyway, Captain America's starting it off in like first quarter, second quarter of 2016.
Yeah,
I know that the new Civil War.
Full Marvel release calendar. Let's see what we got. Yeah. This was made back months ago, I guess, but I don't think it's significantly changed.
They announced some.
Okay, so May is Captain America.
Okay.
Whoops.
So yeah, second quarter is Captain America.
Yeah, Doctor Strange is until November.
Right. That's kind of how they've been doing it. And then not really.
Guardians of the Galaxy is then May of 17.
And then Thor after that, I think.
Then Spider-Man in July.
Oh, they're rushing that one. They just got the license back, and they're rushing Spider-Man in. Not saying like rushing like bad, but I mean they're like money.
Thor's November.
Okay.
Of 17.
And then I think it's.
Then Black Panther in 18.
And then
Then Avengers in 18.
Avengers 3, part 1.
Part 1. Infinity War. And then Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah.
In July.
They changed a few things because they announced that movie, but they had already announced the sequel.
And then in 2019 is Infinity War Part 2, and Captain Marvel in 19. They had something where Ronda Rousey was trying to be or wanted to be Captain Marvel.
Just because it's a female superhero.
She's just a terrible actress.
Yeah, no.
I hope they don't use her.
Like, she was in we saw...
Fast and Furious
7 or 8, is it at this
7.
point? Yeah.
It was bad.
Yeah.
She's not an actor.
No. I mean,
everyone is.
It was a perfect role for her, like, like you would get wrestlers in old
But even then, she was not
she
good.
Was stiff. Crap.
Yeah,
but I mean,
exactly.
like, okay, sure, she can do the... That's what's funny about that, is it's cool, it's stunt casting, and has its place. It's entertaining, and it has its place in the world, but...
Gina Carano is much better. And
and you can train an actor to do the right fight choreography.
A lot easier than you can train
a fighter to be an actor. Yeah.
Because you can do a lot to make it look like they're doing the
because they don't actually have to fight. They just have to look like they're fighting on cue, which is totally.
And even that can be half stunt person.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So that's a lot less of the movie too if it's a main character.
Right. Yeah.
But. Okay, so then, but also next year is the next Jack Reacher movie, which I'm stoked about.
I've just heard that they approved a sequel, which I'm kind of surprised, but I'm encouraged.
I was too. I was
didn't
happy
think it
because
did super well in the theaters. I thought it was.
It wasn't a hit. It was like it cost like $50 million and made like 75.
Well, that's a solid.
Yeah, that's a solid. But normally
that's a base hit.
Yeah,
but the movie theaters these days
honestly,
seem to be
the good thing was
against
apparently
that kind of thing.
Tom Cruise was the one who
liked it and wanted to do it.
He pushed the first one even. I think he wanted to do it. He was a producer, and I think he was the one who pushed for a sequel too.
That's how a lot of those kind of movies get made these days. Is when a big actor that they know they'll get money out of it, even if it's not Marvel money out of it.
Yeah, like $20 million is $20 million.
Right. Yeah.
There's normally just like they wouldn't type the resources. They're trying to go for the home runs.
Right. Yeah.
Too often.
Right.
And.
But no, that movie was great because they just don't make straight solid movies.
And I love the way he did the kid. Like I've never read the books.
Yeah,
so
I know some people
really
were mad because he didn't physically fit the character.
Because he was this.
But he seemed to fit that kind of like. I don't.
The character itself, like the attitude and everything, was great.
Yeah,
and the dialogue is really good and everything. Yeah. And it was just a solid like murder mystery type setup without going ridiculous. I love the car chase was like awesomely realistic. Yeah, and I was watching it I watched this movie like 8 times
without having to go over the top.
The filming they did, which I hadn't really picked up on the first few times during the car chase, was like awesome.
Yeah,
like the way they had the camera would be like it was not attached to the car ever, like they do in a lot of movies. You know what I mean?
Well, usually so they would have like boom, like a long arm on a truck in front of the car.
Yeah, but even the way they did that was really good in this one because you could get like start from far away and then get right up like almost into the cab, and then the car would drive past it, and this cool stuff like that. And the way they had it so that he was not doing it like perfectly at everything, like not doing 3 back spins to like squeeze in between, like he was driving up on curves and then like stalled, and it was like really realistic.
It's hard and good to show because like in real life. You would be more scared than watching in a movie when you're watching a guy do it perfectly, and it's like so exciting.
It's not even about being scared.
Right, but I mean, like the amount of adrenaline,
the realisticness of like when you're driving down a tunnel going the wrong way, and his tires hits the wall, and squeaks up it a little bit. And
right, but I mean, like a real car chase is terrifying / exciting. Right, it is exciting. It's danger. It's excitement. It doesn't look like they do in stunt movie stuff. But usually, the reason they do that in movies is because it's easier to get emotion out of it than portraying it realistically and filming it poorly and having it seem flat because you're disconnected from the action.
So they substituted by just having stuff happen.
Right.
Crazy looking
you're disengaged from the action emotionally as a viewer, so they have to make stuff so crazy it blows your mind.
But it makes it less tense because then you know this is one of those movies where everything works.
Yeah, but now it doesn't work anymore.
Because everything works for the good guy.
It doesn't work anymore because now we've been watching movies for 100 years.
When you can flip upside down and scrape a bomb off the bottom of your car.
Right,
like in
works in a comedy.
2 or 3. I think it was 3.
Yeah.
That was ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
Just stupid shit like that.
Yeah.
Or Fast and Furious, where he like swings the back end of the car over a cliff so he can jump over and grab it.
Right.
Everything just works if you know exactly where it's going to be, how far.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
This shit's not realistic.
It's kind of entertaining, but it's kind of like facepalm.
But in a totally different way.
Yeah.
You know
exactly.
I mean? Like it's just.
Yeah.
So that's what I like. So I'm really stoked about that one.
Interesting. Okay.
And they're making another. I mean, it'll be a while, but they're making another Mission Impossible too.
Oh, it's been a constant moneymaker for them, so why would they stop?
And they've all been decent, except for the second one was crappy, but...
The second one was just a little too much John Woo, even though John Woo is entertaining. But, like, he's entertaining for movies of a different type.
It was the same type of shit we're talking about, though.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he kind of pioneered that in a fun, like, chop-socky, kung fu kind of way. But then...
It wasn't right for that material.
Wasn't right for that material. It was a very different kind of thing in the first movie.
Right.
Even the later movies are a little bit closer to 2 than 1 because they're not as much about like just a straight spy movie.
But in feel they're action back movies, to the same like.
But it feels back to the same
realistic
character,
kind of political. Stuff.
Like future techie, but kind of realistic. And not about like motorcycle. Jumping off into each other, wire foo. Yeah. Exactly. Like, John Woo stuff is entertaining for, like, his old, hard-boiled cop, Chow Yun fat double beretting it through door, as he slides through doorways kind of stuff.
So then what other movies? And they got more Captain Marvel, the Inhumans.
Yeah, that's their big push to replace the X-Men, basically. It's a set of characters that
for the Marvel version because
been in the Marvel universe for a long time, but they were never super popular.
Because they already had the X-Men.
Well, I mean, they're not
and everything.
Their premise is that the Inhumans in the Marvel universe is the race called the Kree, which the guy Ronan in Guardians of the Galaxy was.
Okay.
They end up making the backstory like one of the big things that got the Avengers involved in fighting in space that ended up leading to like that Infinity War stuff was they got involved in the Kree-Skrull War. Like 2 alien races ended up having a skirmish on Earth, so the Avengers went off to try to like see what the fuck was happening, and, like deal with it,
so it doesn't come back to Earth,
right? So they get involved, and then eventually it turns out that the Kree at different points in Earth's history stop by and like do genetic experiments on people because humanity has this potential for a genetic adaptation or something, or like
they can be manipulated. They can be manipulated
and developing all these powers.
Yeah.
Like Kree are much more advanced, but their genetics are stagnant. Like
fixed. They
can't
evolve.
They've not figured out how to evolve themselves any further.
But they can do gene therapy to humans.
But they can do gene therapy to humans, and their genetics are very adaptable and mutatable,
malleable.
Right? Yeah, and so that's why things like mutants eventually happen and stuff like that.
Or ones that so they created the.
So the Inhumans are a strain of mutants that they purposely created, and they actually live in some like secret hidden city. That's got space alien technology, and they've kept themselves separate for a long time or some shit like that.
Yeah.
So it was, neat idea, but it was like, kind of off there, more involved with the space characters than with the Avengers and stuff
with
like
the normal
that.
Type
Yeah, and so like, but I think they're trying to bring them over because they can't use the mutants anymore as an idea. They literally can't use the word mutant, I don't think, in their Marvel stuff.
Interesting.
I mean, they could say like he's
a
mutant.
To?
As long as Fox has so many years after every movie, they have a certain number of years to make another movie, or it lapses or something like that. That's what I've been told. I mean, I didn't read.
And they're making like a Gambit movie or something like that.
Yeah, the next one they're making is Deadpool or whatever.
Deadpool, right? That's coming up next year, though, isn't it?
Yeah, that one's already been filmed, I think. And they're just post or something, or they're in production.
Oh, another one is I think Suicide Squad's probably gonna be shitty.
Yeah,
and I think Batman v Superman is probably gonna be shitty too.
I don't have a lot of hope.
I'm gonna have to see though. I just have such a low hope for that one for some reason. I think it's gonna like be grown like face palm worthy for whatever reason. I've just got this idea.
I don't have that low with it. I do
have
that for Suicide Squad. I have face palm
things
like that Jared Leto like tattoo Joker version.
Yeah.
Like I understand
Joker.
I understand it's like Joker Cholo. It's not even emo.
Yeah, it's like it's like the MS-13 Joker.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And like, I understand they want to do a departure and be a different kind of Joker than like the previous iterations because you have big shoes to fill, so to speak.
And other people, a lot of different ways have been tried, like the classic like clown type like evil clown type Joker, like the Nicholson one.
And even to a lot of people, the Mark Hamill voice,
is iconic.
Because
to do like that kind of crazy,
the traditional mad clown version, and then
obviously the dark, almost the more realistic, like
sociopathic anarchist, kind of thing
with Heath Ledger.
Who
just wants to watch the world burn.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so they're trying to go.
They were trying something different, but
now they're going more like weird sadist kind of,
like just a sadist criminal, like some sort of criminal overlord who's just a sadist or something, a flamboyant sadist or something. And okay, cool. They want to make it more like a crime overlord than just a random guy. I get it, but like one of my problems with that whole Suicide Squad thing in general is everything I see is like their idea of making a superhero cool is tattoos, right? Or like the supervillain. Everything is tattoos.
Like, that's it. Clothing.
I'm gonna wear like thug clothes and tattoos. Like they have the one villain like what is his name? Like it's like Doctor or Mr. Boomerang or something. He was like a Flash villain in the comic. He ended up in Suicide Squad in the comics. But like his whole thing is, he used these specialized boomerangs, very gimmicky, written in the 70s type stuff, but fun, But their idea to make like an updated version of his costume is to just make him have like cut off fingerless gloves, a grody bum jacket,
and like a face tattoo,
or it's like
a Maori tribe thing or something,
right? Something I don't know. Like it's like his outfit, of course, was cheesy looking because it was done in like the 60s or 70s. It was like a
now they're not.
It was like a blue jacket, long blue jacket, a kind of like airman's hat, like those kind
Garrison cap, like a
hot dog vendor cap. Yeah, exactly, like those. And then it had a little like boomerang swish on it, and then it had a bandolier with like trick boomerangs that were like explosive or freezing, And then he had like a scarf. And like a pilot's scarf.
Like he was a Red Baron or something.
Right, yeah. It was like a white pilot scarf. So it was totally cheesy, for like modern audiences. But their idea of updating it is to make him look like a prison bum.
Right.
Like wonderful.
Yeah, great.
Like I understand that they're all supposed to be out of prison, but like if your idea of
it's just not
intriguing.
Not intriguing. Yeah, so it's weird.
Yeah. I don't have hopes for those at all.
We'll see. It's a few years down.
I could be totally proven wrong, but I just don't. Yeah. not as negative of, like as you.
Right.
I'm like, I guess I'm. What's funny is like with Star Wars, I'm waiting to be impressed. I'm reserving judgment. I'm not getting hyped like everybody else. It's just not coming to me, and I'm gonna go see it, and I'm hoping. With Batman, I am not quite like you where I'm ready to facepalm, but I'm like,
I'm already
facepalming. Like just like you're already facepalming. I am trying to keep a
I really want to like
attitude.
this.
No, not even that. I'm trying to be neutral.
Yeah,
like I'm negative buoyancy, and I'm working to be neutral.
Treading water.
Not
here,
like trying to be positive. I'm trying to be neutral here. I'm about to facepalm with you for whatever reason. It just doesn't seem to me like it's gonna be. It's like it's the same problem for me with all the DC stuff that they've done since this Zack Snyder did the Man of Steel. It seems like because they promo who's going to be Wonder Woman or Aquaman in the movie after this when they do Justice League and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And every picture is, how we make these characters cool. Everything's going to be gray.
Yeah, just dark and
gray.
And I dig it, but I can't. By the way, I'm so pissed he's not making another Punisher movie, but. Yeah. At least they're working him into Daredevil, so hopefully they'll
I hope they do his own show on Netflix.
That would be great. That's what I was actually going to say. Is like another
That'd
Netflix
be better
show.
than a movie to me.
To me, it would be better because he's never had these epic storylines. You know what I mean? They were better.
Well, he did, but they were.
I mean, not like universally ending epic kind of stuff.
No.
They were more just like gritty cop. They were very
right, and they were better as like cop procedural style, where he's hunting a crime family, fighting them through them one by one, dealing with their stuff.
So it's way better suited for a show, I think.
Yeah, not as suited for like one and done in 90 minutes, 2 hours. He has a big blowout.
So that would be great to get it in his own show.
Yeah.
They're making that other Jennifer Jones one. I'd never heard. I'm not know enough to hear.
It's a lesser known thing in the comics. It was critically acclaimed. It was well liked,
and it's fairly modern compared to a lot of the other ones.
Yeah, it works for the kinds of things they're trying to do with.
Which is cool. I like that. Yeah. Because it doesn't really need to intersect with any of the movies.
Right. It's
same with the Punisher. Like, it doesn't he's not in... I mean, like, they always involve them in the real comics, but in the movies, it's not going to make sense to have him in the Avengers movie or anything like that.
Like, maybe if, like, New York gets attacked again, it'd be cool to have him show up in the battlefield at one point, and they'll be like,
who the fuck is
one
this
guy's
guy?
Pinned, and all of a sudden somebody starts spraying bullets and taking down, like,
something.
Hydra agents or something, and they're like, thumbs up, Punisher, and then they're like, okay, cool. But,
Yeah, like, they should have mentioned him in the... number 2, and where it's like they scan everyone, should have been like Frank Castle, something.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Yeah, and Captain
obviously
America
he'd be a
too,
dissident.
Or
like trying to locate Frank Castle.
Cannot locate Frank Castle. That's why he wasn't on the list.
Unlocatable
to locate Frank Castle.
Yeah, because he's like presumed dead officially, I guess.
Yeah.
So they don't have to deal with him.
He's always presumed dead, but the cops know the Punisher's out there, and.
Right. Well, I mean, like, they all know he's alive, but they say he's dead so that they can say why they're not doing anything. They're like, Frank Castle's dead.
Yeah, like, every time it comes up, they're like, look, and they're like, you said he was dead last time. There was a huge fucking explosion.
Frank
the
Castle's
man's dead,
so we can't find him. Like, there's no reason to look for him. He's dead. Because really, they just don't want to try.
Yeah. And see, that kind of thing, like, they had it in the last Warzone movie, but that kind of thing with, like, the character of Soap and other characters like that they use as an explanation for, like, he's kind of got inside people in the cops in New York that, like... Sympathetic, so they...
Even if not working directly with
are purposely inept in every investigation.
Right, like letting him skate on little stuff. Yeah. Like, if they probably could have caught him or made his life miserable, they don't.
Right, yeah.
Or they give him information and stuff like that.
Right, certain police officers are kind of, like, happy that this guy's taking down the mob,
Although I think the Death Wish version is more realistic, where they could go after you way more than they ever go after criminals.
Yeah. Well, that's been proven true throughout history.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, again, as we've said in other things, like, they hate the breach of their authority more than they actually hate crime.
Well, they hate someone playing outside the game. The criminals are part of the game. They need them.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. They hate someone breaching, like, fixing the problem is not really what they're there for.
No, they don't really care about that.
The average cop doesn't even think about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even how they view.
It's not how they're trained.
Yeah, they're just
taught, or what they're expected to do by
doing
bosses.
this in the game. So it's just whack-a-mole to them.
Right.
The mole pops his head up, we whack it.
Yeah,
and so when one can't get whacked down, that's where they focus all their energy. It doesn't matter what the rule is; it's being broken. Yeah. So one that refuses to get whacked down that gets their ire.
Right.
Especially when you're not coming out of one little holes where you're supposed to.
Right, yeah, exactly.
We're sitting there standing beside them.
Stand beside them, clock them, as they're
or just by being there.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Just by being outside of the way they think it should be.
Right, yeah. So. But yeah, for rest of movies this year, movies previous this year, though. Not a whole
many.
lot.
We saw Mission Impossible. That was good.
I still haven't seen that.
That was good. We saw...
Turbo Kid was fun.
Turbo Kid
was a limited release thing.
So was Deathgasm was also fun. Yeah, there's a local bar that's actually been doing good about showing independent movies. Just there's only like 20 seats, and you show up and drink while you're watching. Apparently, that one Blood Punch is going to be showing there too. Where it was like a Groundhog Day, where the ex-boyfriend kept coming back to life, and they having to kill him.
That one looked
interesting. For whatever reason, my girlfriend is enamored with those like Groundhog Day type storylines where you repeat the day. And I don't know why, but they sort of bug me sometimes.
They could be done very poorly. Like Groundhog Day was fun. A lot of like sci-fi TV shows use that trope for an episode.
It was an episode like X-Files had one, Supernatural had one.
Star Trek, I'm sure, has had one. I think they've had them many.
What was shitty
times.
is that movie Source Code. That was crap.
Yeah,
that sort of used it, but in a weird way.
It was an interesting premise once it was revealed what was happening.
It was not enjoyable.
But it was not an enjoyable movie. Like the idea, which the premise was not fully touched upon, which kind of made it cool. But like the idea of that you could get a guy who was near death and somehow like literally affect the universe by like tapping into his brain, you know, at the moment of death or something like that. And that's how he could keep reliving it. Is they were keeping this critically injured person.
Yeah, it's basically just like a torso alive or something.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And that it wasn't that they were time traveling, but he was actually able to do things.
Exploring all the multi-dimensional like possible outcomes for the day to see if there's
like initially they made it seem like he's in somebody else's memories, except he could change things and see what the other outcomes were going to be.
Right.
And so it was like literally like by tapping into his. That's what they called it, like the source code. What the scientist who invented the system said. Like when he said, like at this state, he can see the source code, which literally like seeing the universe
and
Matrix,
like it's basically and the coding for the Matrix, but it's not a program. It's like
it's literally like the path,
the structure of the universe.
Right. Yeah, but they touched on that for like 5 minutes once they have the reveal of that your hero all this time,
which I knew most of the time that he was probably dead or like somehow being manipulated.
Right, yeah. I mean, they hinted at that. So, like, yeah, that premise, but the movie itself just wasn't that entertaining or, like, you know.
Right. No, yeah, it just wasn't very good.
Yeah, but anyway, for movies this year...
Edge of Tomorrow, they had that premise, too, obviously.
Yeah, that was the one that did it pretty well.
But I like that one.
I like that one. Because that one, they played a comedy angle, kind of like Groundhog Day.
Right, where
they went to mix of comedy.
Stupid stuff.
Right, and, like, you know, or, like, you know, how much you actually would just die repeatedly in a situation like that.
Trying to roll away and he dies.
Right, yeah, like that.
And then being frustrated with it and all this other stuff.
Right, yeah. And they glossed over a lot of the having to really repeat yourself a lot. Like
so you don't get bored showing everything over and over again. They did a good job of you not getting bored because they would jump ahead.
Because they had initially, so you got to set it up. This is why, like, this is the problems he faces. That every time he knows what's going to happen, but nobody else knows. And if he told them, I know what's going to happen, they're not going to believe him. So they have to establish that that's something he has to work around. But if you make that, like, every run through deals with that, which a lot of them do, like, you know, they'll have that scene too many times.
Right.
And, like, they don't show, like, what a guy like he did is if you really were in that situation, you would learn to just find things to say that manipulate people without them knowing what you're talking about.
Right.
Because you wouldn't have to explain it.
You want to get through it quickly.
You don't want to get through it quickly. You don't want to have to explain it every time for the hundreds of times you're reliving this day.
Exactly. But I can't think of what other movies I've seen this year. I don't remember. I know I've seen
there's not been much that...
we saw, like, I think,
I saw The Martian, which was
I haven't seen that one.
Competent.
Ant-Man you saw earlier this year. I never saw that one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming out. It's coming out on DVD in a few days, so I'm just going to download it.
Yeah, I got you.
But we saw, I think, the San Andreas was earlier this year.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
That was fine.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot
of what I needed
like comedy. Yeah, exactly. Not what I needed out of it. Yeah,
it was decent. Disaster movie.
Yeah, I've seen a lot.
We saw like the Fast and Furious. I think that was this year, or was that late last year?
I might have been this year.
Yeah, shit, I can't remember.
It's been a long year. We're far into the year now, so
yeah, it's basically over almost.
Yeah,
I can't remember what else I did see this year. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't too many movies.
Well, I mean, that's
Jurassic. We saw the Jurassic Park.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's been a lot of movies actually this year, but like none of them that stuck with me like as much.
Or ones that I was really like stoked for, waiting for a long time, kind of
right.
Thing.
Yeah,
like I am for like Jack Reacher, like
right,
knowing months ahead of time and waiting for it. Nothing like that really.
Yeah.
Just like I'll see that kind of thing.
Right.
But I did really like Nightcrawler, but I didn't see that in theaters.
No, I didn't see it in theaters either.
Because that came out actually last year.
That might have come out previous year, and I saw it
this year.
Netflix or whatever.
Yeah, I really did like that.
Yeah. That was one of those command performance type of movies where, like, that guy, you know, Gyllenhaal made that movie work.
Right.
Because it's all about, like, he's creating this, like, weird, strangely fun to watch psychopathic character.
Very strange.
You know, he's a totally, like, cringeworthy, semi-autistic, you know, or, like, not autistic, but what's the word, Asperger type guy.
Something, yeah.
But like
some sort of
he's got some sort of like, you know, sociopathic need to succeed at this, and he's like willing to do. And they didn't make it too overblown too, which is great. You know, like when he crosses the line, you're aware of he's morally crossed the line, but it's not him stabbing a guy in an alley. Right. You know what I mean?
Because it was subtle enough to be realistic.
Right. It's realistic about how he gets away with it.
It's like all uncomfortable because you know it's wrong and stuff like that. Right. Yeah.
You know he's breaching some code here, or doing something he shouldn't be doing, or for just self-gain purposes and not really.
Yeah, exactly. So cool. Well, that's an hour for us.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good one.
The movies.
Sometimes it happens easy.
We'll see about Bond. I didn't mention much about Bond. Bond, I think I'll enjoy just because I've enjoyed all the other ones to an extent. I still think Casino Royale was the best.
By far the best.
The other ones have been.
I didn't really like the second one that much.
Second one I think was probably the weakest. I think it's like Casino Royale is A. Yeah. Second is C, and B is this Skyfall. Like, you know, in terms of quality. I don't know if they're going to hit another A+ like Casino Royale, but they'll probably do another B.
Yeah, exactly.
B+ or something.
Totally fine.
Totally competent.
Yeah, competent movie. Entertaining. So, that's it for now.
All right.
We'll talk to you guys later.
Adios.